Okay, moving forward, here we have seen how to create a basic table in HTML. So let me add the previous knowledge we had on this. Maybe I want to give this table a heading and I don't want to use the caption. I may just come underneath here and use my maybe H2 and I call it names of students, and then this will form a heading for me, you see. But if you can also use the caption to do this, you can use the caption if you want, but I'm not going to talk about that now. We're going to something else. When we start using table, then there are so many other things that we need to see how to do on table. But here we have basic table. When you are designing your own, please don't feel somehow because the border may not show except you put this line of code that I have here. If you cannot put it, don't worry. If I delete it now, you see that the things are going to be the way it is. See, this is how your own may look like. It is still the same thing. The code I used before was just styling. Please don't feel that your own is not working. It's working perfectly fine. All right, so I'm going to get rid of tables and then let's move on to form. Now you have visited different websites where you have forms to fill. Let me see if I can get any form anywhere. Or maybe all of us are using Facebook. If you want to sign into Facebook, they will ask you to fill a form, your username and your password. Where you enter your username and password is what we call form. All right, and it helps owners of website companies and individuals to gather data information from their customers. Now in HTML we have what we call form elements. Then I'm not going to explain what this action attribute is doing here. Form element defines what a form is. Inside a form element, we have different components that makes up a form element, or that makes up a form in HTML. The first thing that we're going to consider is label. Label helps us to guide those who are filling the form to know the information they are going to fill in any particular field. For example, let me just type in input, and then you see something like this. You see, this is what we call input field. But you seeing this input field, there is nothing, you don't know actually what to do. There is no guidance, no direction, nothing. So if you stumble on a form like this, you will not know what to put in there, whether your name, your phone number, or your address. So that is why we use a form label to give direction to people that are using our form. Anybody, if you finish developing a form on a website or an application, it should be as easy as possible so that those who are using it, when they see the form, they will immediately know what you want them to do and they will go ahead to do it. Now when you type label, you press enter, you need to specify what you are using this label for. What are you labeling? So that's why we have label for equal to, and then open parenthesis. So I'm going to first put name. So I'm going to use this label for name. And what am I going to use as a caption? I'll just put in name so that I have name here. All right. Underneath, I will now put in my input field. My input field, let me just type this input, enter. This input is what creates this empty bar that we have here. All right, so that is the work of the inputs. When you type input, you need to specify the type of data you want to collect. Here now, it is text. So if I write something and I put at this sign and I submit at the end of the day, because the data type is text, this is not going to be recognized as an email or any other thing. It will be converted to completely text, but we have constraint to control the kind of data that can be entered in here. So you specify the data type by using the keyword type equals sign open parenthesis. Here we need to collect only name, and name is text, so we put it text. After that, we have another attribute called name equal to, and I'm going to just call it name. After that, we have ID. ID is very necessary because it helps us to uniquely identify different fields in our form. So I may call this ID maybe name, or I'll just call it username. All right. So like this now, my input field for name is set. There are a few other things that we can do, but for now, with these things that I've highlighted here, you have been able to create an input field that can collect someone's name in HTML. You can also see some fields like, let me see, I think my Facebook is open here. Let me check on incognito and then check for Facebook. I really want to show us. Okay, very good. You see that inside this field, you are seeing email address or phone number. This kind of text is what we call placeholder. We call it placeholder. These people here, the Facebook people, did not use label like we did. We used our label to show name. You see, what we did here is that we used our label to put this name here. So in Facebook, they did not use label. Rather, they used another thing called placeholder. And that is why you are seeing what you have here. You see the password. Password is inside the field. And this looks good. So for you to give your visitors direction, you can use either this label or you use a placeholder. So I'm going to add a placeholder here. And then I just type in placeholder, and then maybe I put your name. Okay, so you see the placeholder is inside, and then it will also help you to know that what you need to type in here is your name. If you can use the two of them, it is allowed. If you can use only one, it is allowed. But most importantly, you should make sure that you give those who are using your form direction on what to do. Don't allow them to think to know what you need from them. That is very important in web development. So I'm going to leave these two for the sake of this class. But when you are designing or developing your own website, you make your choice on what to use. Sometimes the client will tell you their taste of what they want, and then you have to work with that. So I'm going to create another input field by using the label. This time I'm going to use password, input for password, and then I'm going to call this password. Then the inputs here, it's going to be, instead of the data type, instead of text, this time is going to be password. And then the name is going to be password, or okay, let me just call it password because that is the field that I'm creating label for. and then the ID, I just put PSWD. Now the placeholder, I'm going to use your password. Okay, you see here, to tell you how this data type works, here we have password and here we have text. Text are letters, so when I type in name here, maybe Mark, you see, you can see it. But if I type anything here, you see it is hiding it like password. Okay, then another thing is, let me change this to username since I'm using password there. So I'm just going to change this to username and then password. That's good. Now the last thing that I want to do here before I end this class is to input the submit button. So here I'm just going to use inputs, and then the text is going to be submit. The type is going to be submit, and I'm going to have value of submit. All right, so, and if I click on this submit, nothing happens. Rather, it will pass in a value for me here, name and password, which means it grabs whatever you are typing in here to pass it on to anywhere. It could be on a, maybe on a to a database or to something else. So, but there is nothing here. And there is something I want to show us here that is very important. Normally, if like I used Facebook before, let me go back to Facebook. If I click on login, you see it's going to show me a warning that I did not fill in this form. So there is nothing here to be submitted. So, but here if I click submit, it doesn't give any warning. Rather, it passes empty data. Okay. So there is a keyword. The required keyword helps us to trigger a warning anytime that a field is empty, and then the person clicks the submit button. So at the end here, I'm just going to put required, and then I'll do that for these two. Just have to do required, then I'll save it. So when I click here, it's going to say please fill out this form. If I fill out this form and I click here, it's not going to work. It says fill out this form. Now if I type in whatever and I submit, you see that whatever I typed is going to be passed onto the browser. Don't worry about all this. We're going to look at that later. Very good. So I think at this point we have gathered a handful of knowledge on how to create HTML form. Notwithstanding, you see that this is arranged horizontally. So you may want it to be vertical. That is, this password should come underneath the username and the submit button under. That would make me to introduce what we call line break in HTML. Line break is a tag. It's an empty HTML tag, and it goes this way: BR, you put space, /, and then you close it. That is what we call line break. I see that it has cut the line, and then you can add the same here in order to in order to bring down the submit button underneath. So that's it for this. And then I'm also going to put a heading here. I'm going to use H2, and I'll just call this login form. Okay, so here I have my login form, and yes, it looks ugly, right? But no problem. By the time, very soon, we're going to be doing beautiful development, because we'll be using our CSS to beautify our HTML elements. Thank you so much for joining this class so far. Feel free to ask your questions and make sure that you practice. Practice brings perfection, and if you must know web development, you must practice. I want to give you an activity to do over this weekend before we meet again next week. I want you to create this form. Create a registration form instead of login form, right? You are going to create a registration form that contains first name, last name, country, and then maybe phone number. First name, last name, country, phone number. So that is 4 fields with the submit button. And then your own heading is going to be registration form, not login form. I'll be happy to see you get it done. If you are confused, watch this video again to remember how to create different fields. And then once you are done, you feel free to communicate to our platform. Thank you, and God bless you. Bye.